From Kolkata to the rest of the country, young women, doctors are protesting, demanding justice and safe workspaces after a 31-year-old resident doctor was raped and brutally murdered inside a hospital, her workplace, where she spent hours treating patients, several times beyond 24 hours. The rape happened inside a seminar room. There were no CCTVs, as in the CCTV was not functional. She went to the seminar room to rest for a bit before getting back to the patients because she was tired. The 4-page autopsy report has a list of 10 injuries on the body from the eyes to the ankles, including bleeding from her private parts, eyes, mouth, and various parts of her body broken, collarbone. She fought back fiercely. The incident has sent chills across the country as scores of women are out on the streets, not just demanding justice, but also demanding for their own safety at workplaces. From functional CCTVs to washrooms to restrooms, the battle for safe workspaces is age-old. In fact, just last year, in January, India's pride medal-winning wrestlers, women and men, took to the streets in the heart of the national capital, demanding action against the then Wrestling Federation of India chief, Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, alleging sexual harassment of women wrestlers at camps. Many went on to return their medals, demanding safe workspaces. And don't forget what the IOA chief, PT Usha, had said about them amid these historic protests. And I quote her, "Protests amount to gross indiscipline. It tarnishes the country's image, sets bad precedent." This is as the protests had emerged and intensified. The first response to protests are crucial from authorities. If you don't want to jump in support, don't jump in defense or attack. The first response by a woman in power and decision-making, and of course, India's celebrated athlete, a huge problem in itself. More than 25 years from the Supreme Court judgment and a decade after constitutionally mandated Posh Act, sexual harassment at the workplace continues to be the grim reality of thousands of women, many of whom do not speak up. For those who want to know, who may know, let me take you through some extremely important cases, and let's just look at what's changed and in many cases what's not changed. It was way back in 1992 that a social worker appointed by the Rajasthan government was gang raped for stopping a child marriage. It was almost after 5 years of various struggles, including against the verdicts of the judiciary, that a PIL by an umbrella organization, Vishaka, reached the Supreme Court. That eventually went down to lay or establish a set of guidelines to deal with complaints of sexual harassment of working women. Remember, this was way back in 1997, the first ever such guidelines. But it was even before that. And, you know, many would have said for that time it was an audacious case, which was fought by a senior IS officer against a celebrated IPS officer, KPS Gill, often referred to as the buttock slapping case. KPS Gill was convicted in 1996, upheld by the Supreme Court in 2005. Sentenced to 3 months of rigorous imprisonment and fined, case dragged on for almost 2 decades. This is way back in 1988, remember that. And there have been several instances. Today I'm going to just pick up some cases from different arenas to try and establish that women's workspaces have diversified. They are no longer restricted to any particular sector. But how safety at workplace is still a huge challenge. We saw it with the wrestlers. Just one example from the sporting arena, and we've seen other cases. Remember the 2002 Tanish Murthy case against his secretary at Infosys, accusing him of inappropriate advances, creating hostile environment, and allegations from another employee as well. Infosys settled the case out of court for $3 million. Years later, Soumya Vishwanathan was murdered in 2008 after leaving work late night for just doing her work. A journalist. It influenced policies on late-night work, transportation safety, and several other concerns, eventually even in the media fraternity. It was only in 2013 that a legislative backing was given to the Vishaka guidelines and the sexual harassment of women at workplace. Commonly known as Posh Act, passed in Rajya Sabha to provide protection against sexual harassment of women at workplace. The Act mandated all employers to constitute an internal complaints committee with 10 or more employees. More than 50% members should be women and headed by a woman employee for the prevention and redressal of complaints of sexual harassment and for matters connected with it. However, how did Posh Act define sexual harassment? And this is important to understand. Physical contact and advances, demand or request for sexual favors, sexually colored remarks showing pornography, unwelcome physical, verbal or non-verbal conduct of sexual nature. But remember, even as we discuss this, we have an Indian who has been raped and murdered at her workplace. This is nothing short of India's shame. I'm being joined right now by a very exhaustive panel. And it's going to take a while before we are able to get to the heart of it all. Allow me to introduce my panelists, the first set of my panelists at this point. I'm being joined by Twinklle Gangwar, who's an event host, Dr. Sunita Godra, I'm also going to be joined by Dr. Shafaat Ahmed, who's a senior resident doctor at the Loknayak Hospital, and Merin Matthew, who's an entrepreneur. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Really appreciate this. It's very difficult to be discussing what we're going to be discussing, but nonetheless, it's hugely important. Dr. Shafaat Ahmed, with all the protests that are unfolding across the country, what is it that's uniting all the doctors, all the women, all the young trainees, the young aspirants, women and men? What is at the heart of it? Of course, nothing can compensate for the disastrous loss, the shameful loss of a doctor in India in 2024. But what is at the heart of these protests as all of you take to the streets?
I feel this incident is so grave, it has shook us to the very core. All of us, when we are in training, we do long duty hours like 24 hours, 36 hours. But at the end of it, when we go to rest, we feel like when we are in our doctor's duty room, we are finally safe. Okay, there is a guard outside and now we can rest for some time. But this incident, that when she went to rest and she was raped and murdered at that time, it has shook us really. And therefore, all of us keep on imagining that we have been in such situations where we have been thinking, maybe this is not a safe place, like maybe we should be more careful here, but nothing has happened. So everybody is having flashbacks right now, and what we want is enhanced security for all resident doctors all across all medical colleges of India.
So when you talk about enhanced safety and security, could you break this down for us? What's on your mind? As a woman, as a doctor, what's on your mind?
So I feel like everybody, like in this case, she was in the emergency building itself, but she did not have a designated doctor's duty room. So I feel like a designated doctor's duty room should be there in all hospitals. Then the CCTV coverage should be better. It should be there at crucial places. For example, there's a ward and then there's a doctor's duty room. So in between that, there should be a CCTV. Whoever is going, like sometimes during the night, even patients come inside the doctor's duty room. So all of that should be there. And thirdly, security personnel should be there. And the number that we have in the hospital these days, I feel like more should be allocated.
That's true. And I mean, how do you see this go forward? Are you all going to continue your protests?
We stand in solidarity with RG Medical College, and we are really hopeful that the government will meet their demands. Till then, we stand in solidarity in protest with them. And all emergency services are ongoing. We do not want our critical patients to suffer, so all emergency services will be going on.
All right, okay. And let's look at this. These are also unprecedented protests. These are unprecedented protests of women doctors, trainees, who are really asking for safe workspaces. But as I said, we're looking at women's safety at workspaces beyond only hospitals. As I said, women are no longer in just restricted sectors. They're all over. Twinklle Gangwar, if I can come to you at this point, what has been your experience? You are an MC, you host events, you travel across the country and abroad, you work with many people, some known, some not known. What has been your experience?
So can I share my experience of a hospital before I share my experience of my work?
Sure, please go ahead.
So almost 10 years back, 2013 yes, 2013, I met with an accident and I had undergone a surgery. During that surgery time, when I was, the anesthesia was wearing off, there was a ward boy who tried molesting me. And he thought I could not understand because I am, on drugs. So I will not understand what's happening, but I could understand that. And it's not just workspace, it's basically all the people around. Every single place a woman is there, you have to take care of a woman, irrespective of it's a hotel, it's a hospital, or she's going to a cafe, every place, not just places like clubs or places where there are bouncers or there is police, but anywhere a woman steps, anywhere a woman walks, every place should feel safe. And if you talk about my travel experience, yes, I have, of course, not felt safe because I've traveled to a lot of places apart from the metro cities. So Mumbai, yes, I felt very safe. Delhi, yes, I'm saying it's getting much better. But I've traveled to remote areas also. And the most problematic thing that I have faced is there are no transportation after, say, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the city. So that is very important to take care of. And so once what happened, I took a bus from a remote area to Mumbai and the bus got late. I was supposed to leave by 11. I left the event by 11. And from 11 till 2, I was standing on the road, scared, trying to be around cameras, looking at the cameras, if they're capturing me or not, if somebody comes around me or not. And I stood there praying and, all the Hanuman Chalisa, whatever I could do at that moment of all my people. I was constantly calling my mom and I'm saying like, Mom, just stay on the call, just stay on the call. I can't even tell her that I'm in such a situation where even she will get terrified. How is my daughter doing? Like, she'll be terrified. She won't be able to sleep. So I was trying to have a communication with her. So these all things are a real problem for a woman.
Right.
And yes.
Okay. Okay. Very quickly, if I can get in Miss Merrin Matthew as well. Thank you for joining us, Miss Merrin. It's important, and I'm glad that you are with us because you've had a first-hand account of the functioning of a Posh committee, of a Posh Act, of the ICC panel, and you are still waging a legal battle. How difficult, what can I ask? My question really at this point is just how challenging has this whole process in itself been for you?
Yeah, thank you, Sneha. Yes, it's been about more than about 8 years right now that I've actually, my complaint actually went to the ICSC committee. The Posh has the internal complaints committee that has been formulated. But it so happened that the ICSC committee, which is basically, I understand that if the institution is one without integrity, what my thing is, and wants to protect the employer, and the only option left for the left for the
No, when you're
complainant
saying something
is
like
to
this,
go for
why are you saying that is what we're trying to understand. What were the findings in the ICC committee that bothered you, troubled you, and made you come to this conclusion? What were the troublesome findings?
Yeah. So they basically, after the entire 3 months of an inquiry, they suggested that there is no such a thing of a sexual harassment which has actually happened at the workplace, even though I had eyewitnesses, even though there was another complainant who had complained against the same person, and they also said that there is no CCTV evidence, because actually it was very surprising and shocking for me, because the Posh actually doesn't actually need an evidence there. They just need the statement from the complainant, from the victim. And yes, if it is backed by enough of eyewitnesses, that is so much so that they have to take an action. But the ICC committee, which was actually cherry picked, I would say, the committee was actually formulated once my complaint was made. They've actually, there was no committee as such in my office at that point of time. When my complaint came, they actually formulated a committee, and it was, I would really say, they were handpicked or cherry picked so that they can protect the person who actually, the employer or the institute,
Okay.
to actually safeguard the name of that. They did that. So that is what has made me into this 8 years of
Okay, and it's
battle that I
important
have to
to
go through.
mention to our viewers at this point, you are still fighting a legal battle. Despite
Yes.
despite the committee's findings, you have taken this on legally and are still fighting a legal battle. Merin, allow us a few minutes. Let me introduce my other panelists as well. To Twinklle, Dr. Shafaat, as well as Merin. At any point, if you have a question to ask our panelists, please feel free to raise your hands and ask your question at any point. But Dr. Suneet Godra joins us, who is an Asian marathon champion. Dr. Trupti Gulada joins us, who's an infectious physician, Unison Medicare and Research Center. Also, Shamina Shafiq, Trupti Gulada, as well as Shamina Shafiq, who's an ex-member NCW. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us on this discussion. First, if I can just come to Dr. Trupti Gulada. What do you make out of what you're seeing? You heard a panelist right now speak, and the demands are just so basic. You are a woman doctor. You may not be as young as the doctors who are protesting outside. You may be in the system for a very long time. But what's stopping the medical fraternity, the hospitals, to ensure that hospitals of all the places can really be safe work environments? I mean, at the end of the day, what was that woman really wanting? She wanted a place to rest. How difficult would have been a rest room to provide, a safe rest room? She had to go to sit in a seminar room to rest. CCTVs. I mean, these are basic things. It's hard as people who are not part of daily hospital administrations to imagine that these would not be in a reality across hospitals. Restrooms, washrooms, basic demands. They are not asking for the sky.
This entire episode is just a highlight of the shameful state of affairs and the state of women in workplaces. And, you've seen that, of course, women are targets, but doctors are targets as well. And, there is always incidences of violence against doctors. And there are laws in place, but there has not been a single case of conviction to date. On an average, there is one protest every month in India, in hospitals or workplaces or medical systems. But that's the end of the protest. There are promises made, but nothing is done. There are no SOPs for safety protocols in medical colleges or hospitals, be it on campus, be it regarding transport, because as we all know that doctors do work odd hours, and there are other professions as well that work odd hours, and
Correct.
there are SOPs in place for quite a few workplaces. But especially when it comes to medical colleges, hospitals, there are no SOPs in place. This highlights the importance of a need for a national level guideline or regulation, which really advocates for a task force in every institute, which is really led by women, which identify which are those danger zones, what are the flaws, where are the loopholes where women can be in trouble. and closing those loopholes with recommendations that are taken seriously, not just on paper, not just false promises made,
Do you
but
see that
something that
happen
is
now?
actually.
Do you see that happen in near future?
It should happen. I mean, this is like a wake up call. How much will we wait? Do we need more rapes and more deaths to wake us up and say that this is important and should be done? I think this is one moment where none of us should be quiet.
Okay.
This
Okay.
needs to be a non stop campaign until we have
Okay.
things.
Right. Dr. Sunita Godara, if I can come to you. You've been a champion yourself. India prides in you. The protests that India witnessed last year have been historic in so many ways. Wrestlers, India's pride, coming out to the streets, not just protesting, but also returning their medals. That literally is their glory, is their hard work that they have earned. Nobody bestowed it upon them. And you have them return all of that. Do you see things change in the sporting arena? Is it just about wrestling, or is it far beyond? Can we say the sports world, the sporting fraternity, the sporting institutions are a safe place for women to come and work?
Not at all. Not at all. Actually, what happened with wrestlers, you can see now also hearings going on, and there is no punishment for the culprit. Secondly, the girl, or say the group of girls who raise voice, they become the enemy of the system. System is not supportive. For example, IOA president, what she said that time when they were raising their voice, that they are indisciplined. Means when a female head of IOA is not empathetic or say sensitive about the sexual harassment, one thing. Secondly, we don't have any complaint system. We don't have any sexual harassment committees. There are, if you ask system, they'll say, oh, we have all the committees, but they are only on the paper. We don't have any ethics commission. And
why do you say that? Why is it only on the paper? Can you explain that to us?
Wrestling Federation, they said, yes, we have a sexual harassment committee. And Sakshi Malik was the member of that. But they themselves didn't know what to do, where to go. Actually, those committees are made, but they are made only on the paper. And no committees is working like having discussions or, having meetings so that they are active. They're not. They're not active committees. Ethics Commission, we have on paper, but otherwise Ethics Commission is not there. Otherwise, the wrestler problem, which came last year, should have been sorted out by now, but it's not. It should have been sorted out by the Ethics Commission of Sports Ministry, not in the High Court, because the sports law says a ban for life for any culprit, but no one is banned as yet doing any sexual harassment. The second problem in sports is the girls cannot complain. They are scared. Young girls, especially, they're scared. Camp se nikal denge. They will not be selected. So all these problems are there. So sometimes the girls are not coming out. They are not raising their voice, and they are just tolerating such things. So we have to have a committee where these girls will think that, okay, if we speak out in front of this committee, we will be, we'll have some justice. So those kind of committees are missing.
Right. Allow me to go to Shamina Shafiq at this point, ma'am. I'll return to you. Just give me a few minutes. Let me go to Shamina Shafiq. Ms. Shamina, I have to ask you this question. You have at least 2-3 women on our panel who have spoken about the committee that's supposed to look into allegations of sexual harassment. And look at the statements that have been made. They are very clearly saying that these are just lip service committees. One of the panelists here, Maren Matthews, said that there was no committee in place and it was set up only after she raised a complaint. She has alleged that it was cherry-picked. It was known, the panel consisted of people who knew the person who was against whom the complaint was made in this particular case. Nonetheless, important point also being that it was created after the complaint was made. And then you also have the other aspect of how The testimonials of others were not taken in place. CCTV evidence, there was no CCTV, so evidence was not taken into place. You also have Dr. Godhra speak about how, again, in the sporting world also, there are systems in place, but nothing seems functional. So isn't really the problem that there is legislatively, there's something in place? We must not forget that we are looking at a rape and a murder. That apart, there's a system in place which seems to be dysfunctional in many cases.
Not many cases, unfortunately, almost all the cases. I must admit that. And I'm appalled and ashamed at the same time, because today in 2024, we are discussing yet another case after 12 years of long battle of Nirbhaya. Unfortunately, I was at the, I would say, fortunately or unfortunately, I really don't know, but I was a member of the National Commission of Women that time. And this act, which you're talking about, protection of sexual harassment at workplace, the bill was passed during my tenure, 2013. I was a member, and I was a proud member, because this was something which was supposed to be historical in terms of protecting the rights of the women who were working day in and day out. There are SOPs very much in place. I heard the doctor previously talking about there are no SOPs. There are SOPs of this act, and let me tell you, in India, this is the only act which actually talks about prevention of crime against women. All IPC sections, all acts, all laws actually are implemented, or they come into place only after the crime has been committed. But this is one act, this was one bill which was passed, which actually is there to ensure that women are protected at their workplaces. There are SOPs, but yes, unfortunately, no one takes them seriously. No one, absolutely no one. When I say no one, I mean neither the government, nor the administration, nor the service provider, or the workplace management. No one takes it seriously. Even the women who are working don't take these things seriously. Only they talk about it once a crime or something has happened to them. Then they realize, oh, where is the committee? I have to go to it. Actually, it is also, I will first talk about the responsibility of the women who are working. They should know their rights, and they should try to get those rights exercised in the workplace. They should ask questions from their management as to what is the scenario, what is the status of the committee, because the committee comprises of couple of members, but one member has to be an external member. She has to be a member who knows the legislations, who knows the protocols, who knows the SOPs, who is a member of an NGO or some kind of an activist.
I get your point, Ms. Shafiq, and you're making an important point. But unfortunately, again, the whole onus just seems to be falling on women again and again and again and again and again. Legislation passed, the onus is on women. You need to be safe. The onus is on women. We need to ask questions.
No, you're getting me wrong. Why I'm saying this is because 12 years down the line, the country has failed women. The governments have failed women. Everybody has failed women. I think it's high time we need to ask questions now, because these
Maren Matthew, do you want to respond? Very important, valid points by Shamina Shafiq. She's talking about a very important act that was seen as landmark in India. A committee that's supposed to be... Yeah, go ahead, Maren.
Yeah, I totally understand the spirit behind the Posh Act it was being made. I really wish it was actually being used, because I understand that the majority of the women are very unaware of their rights, and women are afraid to speak their mind lest they lose their jobs. So that is, and like how I said, the rules of the confidentiality and everything, which it basically harasses the victim or the complainant so much. And especially once the Posh Act fails, I feel that is where the extreme or the loophole of the Posh Act is, because once this fails, like in my case, when it failed, I had to reach down to the appeal authority, and the appeal takes a Herculean task to actually receive. I am still fighting. I'm going to one appeal authority to the other appeal authority. I've gone to the labor courts, central appellate. I've gone to the state appellate. I've done a writ petition. So all these things I had to go through because the Posh failed. And because of that, I had to go through the appeal. So while talking that, such a good provision was
Me,
made by
you've
the
had to
act, but
lose your labor years. You've turned an entrepreneur because getting to a basic work is hard considering you have to run court to court. Correct me if I'm wrong.
May I come
absolutely,
in here? I
absolutely,
would like to state a
absolutely.
point.
Sorry.
Yes, Shamina, Miss Shamina, go ahead.
See, the ordeal that the lady is talking about actually, unfortunately, happens to most of the women. But let me tell you, instead of going to all these appeals, you should immediately go and knock the door of the National Commission for Women. Period. It's their job. They will ensure that things get to
No,
the proper consequences. The only problem is right now, unfortunately, again, I'm saying the
Hold it,
NCW
just a
also
minute. I
doesn't
think
seem to
Merin has
be.
to say, Merin, I have to go to other panelists. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Do you want to very quickly respond to Miss Shamina?
And,
yeah, I
and the
did.
state women commissions, the National Commission for Women, these
Hold
are
on,
the
hold on,
bodies
hold on,
who
Miss
need to
Shamina.
work.
Hold on, Miss Shamina. Let Merin speak. Let Merin respond. Hold on, please, Miss Shamina.
I did go to the National Women's Authority. I went to the Human Rights Commission because there was a violation of the natural justice in my case. But no, nothing seemed to work there because they said that because the case was in the appeal, so they are not unable to respond to that. So all these areas I had gone to, but I have not got a solution
Just
for
a
the past
reality
8
check of
years.
just how blaring our systems are. We are running out of time. Merin, thank you for sharing that. But also, very quickly, let me just go across to our other panelists at this point. If I can come to you, Dr. Shafaat Ahmed, when you look at these protests and you look at the reasons that are being stated for many women to not come forward, one, they're not aware of what their rights are. Two, they don't know what to do. Three, they think it could get vindictive. Do you see this a reality in workspaces that you all represent? Is that true of young women?
I feel like the protests that have been in the past, I've seen the largest turnover today because it has like struck a chord with all residents, and especially the female residents. So anybody who had any doubt, people who never used to turn up, everybody was there today. So what you are saying, that people are afraid to come because of what all they have, like limitations, that they will be seen in a certain light. They overcome all that, and everybody came forward today. Everybody is fighting for justice for our colleague who went down.
Right. Such an important point that is being made, and it just shows, let's face the fact, women who are going about doing their regular work, trying to make a career, have a lot at stake, and the last thing many times that they want to do is get onto the wrong side of the employers. And often the perception is that making demands such as these, like restrooms, CCTV, or other reasons for safe workspaces, is only going to land you into a situation like that. Ms. Godakar, with what has happened in the wrestling arena, Ms. Godara, with what has happened in the wrestling arena, do you see a larger repercussion or a reverberation across the sporting world?
See, whatever has happened with wrestling girls, it's once you are rebellion, there is price to be paid to be a rebellion. And same thing now when Vinesh Phogat case was it was in appeal. Again, the IOA president saying that IOA medical staff is not at fault, and this is the onus of athlete and the coach. So why, when the case is for hearing, why the head of the IOA saying so means they are totally against Vinesh Phogat, because she still remembers that when she was at Jantar Mantar, that time also this IOA president said it is indiscipline. If you are raising your voice, it is indiscipline. Means the female saying to female that if you raise voice against the sexual harassment or you put any allegation, this is indiscipline. So see the scenario. And secondly, in sports, all the federations, all the committees, sports ministry, everywhere. These
Absolutely.
committees
I think it's
are
just so important. Dr. Tripti Galada,
inactive. And,
30 seconds to you, Dr.
male
Tripti Galada.
doctors,
Respond to what Dr. Godara is saying. She's talking about how the first responses matter so much. And unfortunately, many times, women don't know or choose not to respond the right way. Possibly PT Usha's response during the wrestlers' protest was a classic example of that. A very high-profile example, but nonetheless, this is common.
It's absolutely true. And I think, therefore, that this entire movement for women's safety has started. I think we really should continue until we reach the logical conclusion. And not just this case, I think we really need to urge for convictions of all the previous cases. Unless there is no conviction, people think they can get away with violence, with lack of dignity for women, and there is no law and order in place. So I think it's absolutely true that the first response this time really needs to be one of real grit and respect for women.
Right. I'm totally out of time, but Ms. Twinklle, my last question to you. You are working in an arena which is totally different from where protests are unfolding right now. Why do these protests strike a chord with you?
As I've already shared my experience when I was in a hospital undergoing a surgery after a traumatic event, imagine the state of mind I was in, going through a lot of pain. And apart from that, you have experienced something which not people around you experience, and you feel like, why me? And on the top of that, I experienced molestation from the person who was supposed to lift me from the operation bed to the stretcher. And imagine the people, holding me, they should make me feel safe, but they're trying to do the wrong thing to me. That was so uncomfortable. That is exactly why this really hits the chord, because it's not just people on the higher posts, it's also the people on the posts who are down there, and they don't know the basic etiquettes of how to treat a woman, and they're not trained well. I believe even they should have a proper training, because
Right.
even when I told, because these people are in a bracket of, you, for example, people say like, chalo chodo, he just touched you, right? Leave it. He has a job of he just earned between a bracket of 10 to 15,000
That's an
rupees.
important
You'll
point.
spoil his life. And even I felt bad, because at that moment I was dealing with a lot of things, and plus the hospital was a very good hospital. I would not take the name, because of course they really helped me. The doctors were really nice.
No, that's true. That's true. No, point
Yeah.
absolutely taken. These are challenges that have to be maneuvered across, and it's often hard to call it out. But very quickly, if I can get in Miss Shamina Shafiq again. Miss Shamina Shafiq, from the 1980s, when people would laugh at the allegations being placed against KPS Gill, to what seems to be a case now where we don't even know whether multiple people were involved. We don't even know anything beyond that one accused who seems to have been arrested. He was an insider associated with the police, had a t-shirt and a bike with Kolkata police written on it. Legislatively, a lot has changed. Largely with a bird's eye view, there are more women in the workforces. Obviously, things are better at the workplaces as well. But how much of it has changed in terms of fighting cases of sexual assault at workplaces?
At the ground level, unfortunately, not much has changed. The only thing which has changed from 80s to now is that at least the media channels like yours are taking up these issues continuously and asking questions. Because we don't see even the women parliamentarians asking questions in the parliament about women's safety or how the Nirbhaya fund has been utilized. Justice Verma committee, after the 2012 Nirbhaya case, gave a very detailed kind of an SOP for all the institutions about trainings, about sensitization, about safety, about ensuring that there are cameras in the workplace, about everything. You talk about any workplace and there were guidelines for that. Justice Verma Committee report is the complete booklet for women's safety in this country. But unfortunately, nobody talks about it. We are living in a country which talks about knee-jerk reactions. Today, something has happened, nobody cares about it. Only when the media takes it up or the people agitate on the roads, the government just sort of does something to ensure that at least at that time the cases are not much talked about. That's it. Nobody is serious about women's safety in this country, even the women parliamentarians.
All right, we'll just leave it at that. As unfortunate as it is, that also is India's reality. A lot will happen over politics over the next few days. It's actually continuing. But the reality and the challenge of it, mostly borne by women, and I'm not saying there are aberrations to this. I'm not saying Posh Act is not misused. All of that being there, workspaces still are a hard place to maneuver, especially when it comes to fighting cases against sexual harassment. At least that's what the expert panel here and several others would say. Twinklle Gangwar, Dr. Sunita Godara, Dr. Trupti Gilada, Dr. Shafaat Ahmed, as well as Merin Matthew and Shamina Shafiq. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been an important discussion and a very sensitively done. Thank you very much.